In this video, we will see what is CPU scheduling. CPU scheduling is the basis of multi-programmed operating systems. The objective of multi-programming is always to have some process running in order to maximize CPU utilization. Scheduling is a fundamental operating system function. Almost all computer resources are scheduled before use. Next is, what is CPU I/O burst cycle? Process execution consists of a cycle of CPU execution and I/O wait. Processes alternate between these two states. CPU burst is when the process is being executed in the CPU, and I/O burst is when the CPU is waiting for I/O for further execution. Process execution begins with a CPU burst that is followed by an I/O burst, then another CPU burst, then another I/O burst, and so on. Eventually, the last CPU burst will end with a system request to terminate execution rather than with another I/O burst. Next, we will see what CPU scheduling algorithms are. They are used to select among the processes in memory that are ready to execute and allocates the CPU to one of them. Whenever the CPU becomes idle, the operating system must select one of the processes in the ready queue to be executed. The selection process is carried out by different scheduling algorithms. There are two main types of scheduling algorithms. First is preemptive. It is from running state to ready state or waiting state to ready state. In this type, CPU can be taken away from the running process. It depends upon the priority. Second type is non-preemptive scheduling. It is from running state to waiting state or running state to terminate state. In this, if CPU is allotted to the process, then CPU cannot be taken away before the completion or termination or waiting of the process. Next is dispatcher. We have seen the working of dispatcher at the beginning of the Unit 1. The dispatcher is the module that gives control of the CPU to the process selected by the short-term scheduler. Its functions involve switching context, switching to user mode, and jumping to the proper location in the user program to restart that program. Next, we will see what are scheduling criteria. There are 5 scheduling criteria. First is CPU utilization. It is the average fraction of time for which the processor or CPU is busy. The range can be 0 to 100%. Second criteria is throughput. It is the total number of processes the system can execute in period of time t. That is the total amount of work done in the unit of time. It depends on the length of the process. Third criteria is turnaround time. It is the interval between submission of the process and its completion. For example, if process begins at time equal to 5 units and completed at time equal to 25 units, then the turnaround time is 20 units. Next criteria is waiting time. It is the average period of time a process spends waiting. And the last criteria is response time. It is the amount of time it takes when a request was submitted until the first response is produced. Now, if you see, the criteria 1 and 2 should be maximum, and the third and fourth and fifth should be minimum.